have before me the latest Asus VivoBook S14X 2022 model and the Asus VivoBook S14 2021. Now, the reason I brought these two models out together is to show off the design and performance changes that took place in the latest 14X model. I want to thank Asus for sponsoring this video and sending over these two laptops for this head-to-head review. Now, right off the bat, as you can see, the screen is substantially different. We have an OLED screen versus an IPS display. You can see the OLED is brighter, more vibrant, and you can also tell that it's a 16:10 aspect ratio versus a 16:9 aspect ratio. The color gamut range is slightly improved on the OLED screen of the 14X. Not only is the color gamut range improved, but like I said, it makes it more vibrant using OLED. And they've actually solved the flicker issue. There's a setting inside of the My Asus Control Center to brighten and dim the screen, but not affect that flicker issue that was happening on previous screens. So that's an awesome attention to detail that Asus made for this latest screen. Now, another thing to point out about these two models is this is toting the i7-12700H from last year. That's really a dedicated mobile GPU that's made for thin and light laptops, where the latest 14X is toting an H series processor, the i7-12700H, which is normally found in gaming laptops and high performance creator workstation laptops. So the fact that they're putting this high performance H series processor into a thin and light laptop raises a few questions for me. Will it perform well? As in, will they be able to push it to its limits without having to throttle it to keep it cool and quiet? Question number one, which we'll find out later in the video. Will it have good battery life? That was a concern of mine when first getting this laptop in. I thought, man, historically, you either need a massive battery or you just need a very, very efficient computer in order to run an H series processor efficiently. Okay, but this laptop comes with the Intel Evo Platform badge. If you don't know much about that program, Intel partners with an OEM manufacturer like Asus to make sure that the CPU integrates into the laptop and meets certain requirements to be considered an Intel Evo Platform laptop. So that's certain battery life parameters. It has to be over 9 hours of battery life on certain tests. We'll find out later in the video if it meets that requirement. I mean, obviously it has to, according to them, because it has the badge, but we'll see in real world tests if that is true. First and foremost, let's go ahead and look at the thin and lightness of these two laptops. I'm gonna pull up the weight and thickness on the screen, and I would definitely say that the newer model is slightly heavier. It's a little bit thicker as well. Okay, so if you're looking for thin and lightness, absolute thin and lightness, then this would still be a better choice. However, you only gain a few ounces with the latest 14X, and it really packs a punch, and I'm excited to get into those benchmarks. However, when we look at the size of the laptop, because of that 16:10 aspect ratio screen, you can see that it is quite a bit taller, which I am perfectly fine with personally. I want that 16:10 aspect ratio screen. I think it's really important. And then as we go ahead and lay down the laptop on top, you can see that they're the same width here with these two. Now, the next thing I want to take a look at is the assembly of each laptop. I always do this on the channel. I love to see how the bottom cover fits into the side panel. And it looks like we have some catchy edges here where the bottom cover sits into the side panel. It sits a little deeper than my personal preference, which creates this edge. It's nothing sharp, but it is a little bit protruding. Now, as we switch over to the Asus VivoBook S14X, it's less of a catchy edge. I still have a little bit there where the bottom cover fits into the side panel, but it's definitely better. It's an improvement over last year's model. And we forgot to do the old tap test on that model, but we'll start with the tap test here on the S14X. Good assembly, feels and sounds well assembled. No hollow shakiness with the tap test. Now let's go ahead and do the last year's S14. S14 is great as well from last year. So no huge improvement there, but overall we're seeing big improvements as far as the design is concerned. Now, these are both all aluminum chassis, top cover, side panels, bottom cover, and so they're both built the same. They have great rigidity, and we'll check out the screen flex here in just a second. But for now, let's do a little open and close of the screen. As you can tell, it's a little bit stiffer hinge on the Asus VivoBook S14X, the newer model. When I go and lift it, it hangs out there a little bit more. Let's go ahead and check if we have any screen bounce. Let's see here. pretty close. All right, let's go ahead and check out the screen flex. Bit of screen flex there. Looks like there's a little bit more screen flex on last year's model. So they made the screen a bit stiffer, which is really nice, being that this is also a bigger screen as well. Now, the next thing I want to jump into before we move on to the open interior of the laptop is the ports. Let's see what kind of ports we have compared to last year's model. As you can see on the left side panel here, we have the USB Type A and quite a large vent here. And that's definitely going to be, in my opinion, pretty good necessity with that warmer processor compared to the last year's 1165 G7. And we have two USB Type-Cs, an HDMI, and a headphone jack on last year's model. So on the right side panels, we have two USB Type-As for the S14 and a micro SD card slot. On the right side panel for the S14X, we have an HDMI, two USB Type-Cs, and a USB Type-A as well as a headphone jack. So it looks like what we lost was the micro SD card slot, but otherwise they have the same amount of ports. Now, as we jump into the interiors of the laptops, you can see that the latest model opens up completely flat. So it has this 180-degree hinge, which to me is very nice. If you're in like a tight quarters, maybe on an airplane or something, you can really get that screen opened up. Because if you're close to this screen, you can't open it really any farther. It just helps with the flexibility of your work environment. Man, all I can say is the brightness of these two screens is noticeably different. Let me make sure these are turned up all the way. But I mean, it's just so much more vibrant on the latest 14X. It just looks really, really nice. Now the keyboards are slightly different. As you can see, we have this home button, page up, page down, and then the function key. We don't have those keys here on the 14X. I will say that I do like this little yellow accent. We have that similar, accented key, but instead of using yellow, they have like this pattern on the enter key. And then the red escape key, I think, is always a really neat head nod. Not a lot of companies do a lot of fancy things with the keys. Asus is always doing something unique and interesting, which I really like. Also on the keyboard deck here, you can see we have some design elements, some little lines and dashes. So it just really sets it apart from last year's model, makes it stand out a little bit more. Now, one of the biggest differences is going to be the massive glass trackpad that you have on the latest model compared to the rinky-dinky little one on last year's model. So if you're a designer, video editor, photographer, artist, just creator in general, this larger trackpad is going to make for a much better on-the-go experience. So if it were me personally, I would definitely be going for the latest VivoBook model, just off of the larger 16:10 aspect ratio screen and the larger trackpad. Trying to work on a small trackpad as a creator can be very frustrating. Now they both have fingerprint readers. The S14 is going to be here on the keyboard deck, where the S14X is going to be under the power button. So this one does include it. This one's just a little more integrated into the setup. Here's a quick audio sample of me using both the keyboards and trackpads so you can hear how that sounds. And for a little sample of the speakers, here's an audio sample of each of the speakers in use. Now they both come with webcams. However, the nice touch of the 14X is it has this manual cutoff switch for the webcam, so you know that you're not being cyber spied on. And here's a quick audio sample of me using each of the webcams. This is the webcam on the Asus VivoBook S14X, and a little sample of the audio for you. This is the webcam on the Asus VivoBook S14, and a little bit of an audio sample for you. Now before we jump into the performance benchmarks, let's talk about battery life. And the S14 actually performed better in regards to battery life, which I honestly expected. It has the i7-12700H, that's a lower wattage CPU, it's going to be 15 to 28 watts versus the 45 watts maximum power draw in the VivoBook 14X. So coming into this, I was like, okay, it's not going to be as good as the S14, which was true. However, the S14 was able to get 9 hours of streaming battery life out of the H series processor. That is the best battery life I've ever seen out of the i7-12700H. On my channel, I've reviewed a bunch of laptops already this year. Nothing got close to that 9 hours. I think the closest one was around 7 hours of battery life. And so that this laptop can perform with great battery life, and we're gonna look at the benchmarks here in just a minute, was exciting to me. You actually also got over 4 hours of battery life while video editing. They took this very high output processor and showed us that they could make it efficient and make it a great on-the-go laptop. So great work, Asus. Now jumping into the performance benchmarks, this is where you can see that it's not even a competition. Looking at the single core and multi-core performance of both Cinebench R23 and Geekbench, the new i7-12700H absolutely dominates, which I expected, which is why when I saw great battery life still out of the 14X and then saw these performance benchmarks, I was able to extrapolate, okay, we're not going to have better battery life, but that we still get this good of battery life out of this much performance makes for an excellent package. And that is what made me most excited. Now, moving on to some real world benchmarks, let's go ahead and check out Photoshop. Now, looking at Photoshop, we saw that the newer model, the 14X, was able to pull off a 589 in the Photoshop Future Systems benchmark versus the 374 in last year's model. Now, what about the thermals while running these Photoshop benchmarks? Well, looking at the thermal results, they're actually gonna have better thermal results out of the 14X. I was absolutely shocked because, like I said earlier in the video, this is a 15 watt to 28 watt CPU, where this is a 45 watt max power draw CPU. It blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind that we had better thermals out of the i7-12700H. I was very excited because this is something I did not expect. These laptops have been warmer historically than their G series counterparts. Now, the next thing I want to look at is video editing, and this is where it really wasn't a competition. Now, the reason being is the S14 would not run 4K video. It wouldn't export it, it wouldn't play it back in the timeline, it would just kind of lock up Premiere Pro and then it would shut down. So if you're gonna pick up this laptop, you would be doing 1080p only. There's not even a question trying to do 4K. Now, in regards to the 4K playback on this laptop, at full quality, you're actually gonna drop about 9,000 frames out of 16,177 in the project. However, if you drop down the playback quality in the timeline to half, you're gonna go down to 18 drop frames in that 9-minute project. Now, that project has motion graphics, it has music, it has a B-roll shot, it has a main roll, it's got a lot of footage in it, and so it only drops 18 frames at half quality is excellent. And so this laptop would be great for the 4K video editor, and you have 4 hours of opportunity to video edit it on the go with the battery life with this laptop. Keep in mind that your export times are gonna be a little slower than your average laptop toting this i7 processor because those laptops come with dedicated GPUs, which helps with the encoding of the project when exporting. So if you want a really fast export time, then you may want to consider going with a dedicated GPU equipped laptop, just to be totally honest and transparent in this review. And Asus offers a lot of great laptops with that type of configuration. However, if you don't mind a slightly slower export time, then this laptop would be a great option because it's thin and light, it has great battery life, and you could save some money by not getting that dedicated GPU. That definitely adds an extra cost to your laptop. So keep that in mind. Now, the thermal results are what was really exciting on the export times as well. So we never saw above a 65 degrees Celsius, and I have not seen that on many laptops. We never got above a 65 degrees Celsius, which is a fantastic thermal result. Now, we also did not see above a 45 decibel fan noise. So this laptop remains cool and quiet. Again, another one of those check marks for the Intel Evo Platform badge that this laptop has on it. When comparing the two models, it's quickly becoming a dwindling competition. The new model just offers so much design and performance increase. Plus, if you flip over your laptop, pull off the bottom cover, you can actually upgrade the RAM, where in last year's model you could not. So the upgrade path would give you improved performance on top of what it already does here in this review. I again want to thank Asus for sponsoring this video, sending us over these two laptops to do this comparison. Links in the description if you're ready to make a purchase. Likes if this video has brought you some value, and subs if you don't miss out on the future uploads. I'll see you here in the next one.